the first food aid distribution in the center of the Sudanese capital of Khartoum. Since civil war broke out 2 years ago, the Sudanese army has been at war with paramilitary rapid support forces. And then moving on, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says that he will announce the names of the people who will lead the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the delays encountered in the investigation prosecuting Truth and Reconciliation Commission cases. This follows Wednesday's announcement that a commission of inquiry will be established. Ramaphosa says that the government would like the families of the victims who were affected by apartheid-era crimes to find their closure. Ramaphosa was speaking to the media in Middelburg, Mpumalanga, after the May Day celebrations that took place at the Kies Taljat Stadium. Then finally, Ukraine's foreign minister has welcomed a deal with the United States to jointly exploit Ukrainian mineral and fossil fuel reserves. Idriy Sybiha called it an important milestone to strengthen Ukraine's economy and security. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described it as an important step in ending the war with Russia. For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please email us to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, I'm Fikile Lungwati. Let's start off with Amajida edged past resilient Tanzanian side to claim their first vital 3 points at the AFCON Under-20. And reigning Madrid Open champion Iga Swiatek suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Coco Gauff. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Well, let's take a moment to thank the team before we get into our Africa Roundup. On production is Hlengiwe Mabaso, Joey Likhodi, and Pumuzo Ramagaza. On technical production is Didimalo Makao. On news, Nolutando Butelezi. Sports, Fikile Lingwati, you just heard them now. On economics news later, we'll be joined by Tabiso Lehoku, and our social media lady is Talent Butelezi. That's the team it takes to make Rise and Shine happen. Let's get into our Africa Roundup now, where we just give you, I guess, an overview of what happened yesterday in news and what you could have missed overnight, and what to look forward to in terms of updates then on this new day. It is 2nd of April, Friday. We start with the Democratic Republic of Congo, who has launched a bid to strip former President Joseph Kabila of his lifelong immunity so he can face trial on charges of supporting the M23 insurgency in the country's east.
Kabila, who stepped down following a 2018 election after nearly 2 decades in power, has previously denied backing the rebels. He's been outside Congo since late 2023, mostly in South Africa, but recently said he would return to help find a solution to the rebel crisis. Since January, M23 rebels have seized large areas, including eastern Congo's 2 biggest cities. Congo's government is seeking to draft a peace deal to end the conflict this week. Justice Minister Constant Mutamba told reporters in Kinshasa on Wednesday evening that the Congolese Army's Attorney General had asked the Senate to revoke Kabila's immunity from prosecution. He said Kabila should return to Congo to face justice or risk being tried in absentia.
Kenya's police have said that the fatal shooting of a lawmaker by a gunman aboard a motorcycle in the capital Nairobi on Wednesday evening appeared to be targeted and premeditated. Charles Were, a member of parliament representing Kisipol constituency in Kenya's west, was shot dead when his vehicle was stopped at a traffic light on Ngong Road.
Parliamentarians like Eva Kinya-Obara expressed their sadness at the news outside a hospital in the capital, where Were had been pronounced dead.
How I pray that this matter is going to be conclusively brought to book and we will know who murdered Honorable Charles Ongondowere.
Citizen TV said Were was shot at close range and that his driver had survived the attack. Were was a member of the opposition ODM party led by veteran politician Raila Odinga, who lost to William Ruto in the last election in 2022.
Supporters of Burkina Faso's military leader rallied in the capital, Ouagadougou, following claims from the country's junta that it had thwarted a major coup plot. The junta-led country's prime minister said the rally makes imperialism tremble.
According to organisers, the rally was also to denounce remarks attributed to US General Michael Langley, accusing junta leader Ibrahim Traoré of using Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal protection at the expense of the well-being of the people.
We are here to tell American generals, instead of making an American security report, they will lie as they usually do. Colin Powell lied, Saddam Hussein is dead. Barack Obama lied, Gaddafi is dead. This time it will not pass. Our economy belongs to us. Our gold belongs to us. Our underground resources belong to us.
The World Health Organization plans to officially back the use of weight loss drugs to treat obesity in adults for the first time. In a memo reviewed by Reuters, it shows that this is marking a shift in its approach to treating the global health problem. Alex Cohen has more.
A memo reviewed by Reuters Thursday says the UN agency's conditional recommendation will be officially released in August as part of new guidelines on treating obesity. It is also working on separate guidelines for children and adolescents. The WHO also called for strategies to improve access to the treatment in low and middle income countries, where 70% of the more than 1 billion people with obesity live, based on World Bank estimates. The wildly popular medications include Wegovy, developed by Novo Nordisk, and Zepbound by Eli Lilly. In clinical trials, people lost 15 to 20% of their body weight depending on the drug, but they can cost over $1,000 a month.
And that's how we end our Africa Roundup for this Friday. Still to come, we get our North Africa Wrap, where we take a look at some stories making headlines in that region of the continent. And then, of course, we bring you our G20 fact for the day.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Right, it's 6:13 Central Africa time, and it's time now on the program to take a look at some of the key stories making headlines across North Africa in particular, from the political shifts in Sudan and Libya's latest decrees to growing unrest in Tunisia. It's a region facing multiple layers of change and challenge. And joining us to unpack these developments is veteran journalist Shafiq Morton, whose reporting career spans over 4 decades. And he's covered major events in North Africa, the Middle East and the Far East. And he's also the author of several books, including 2 focused on Saudi Arabia and Palestine. Shafiq, good to talk to you. Always nice to have you on the program.
Morning, Peter. It's all good.
Right, so let's start in Libya. The Presidential Council has issued the first of what says will be 12 decrees under the National Rescue Plan. What do you reckon is the significance of these early moves, particularly ones aiming at undoing legislation from the House of Representatives?
Yeah, the Libyan story, the easy way of explaining Libya is using the word layered chaos, because you've just mentioned one of the 5 bodies that are sort of jousting for power in Libya with various alliances. You know, you've got the GNU in the west of Libya, which is in Tripoli. You've got the GNS, which is in the east in Benghazi, and then you've got the High Council of State, the House of Representatives. High Council of State supports the GNU, House of Rep supports the GNS, and then you've got the Presidency Council, which consists of representatives from various regions in the country. So just to sort of confuse ourselves with what's going on in terms of all the bodies that are in there, the Presidency Council has issued these 3 decrees. One is for the independence of the judiciary. 2 is for the activation of national reconciliation. And the 3rd one is for the activation of what they call self-determination, whatever that may mean. Now, on paper, this looks pretty good. It's been endorsed by a Mufti in Libya called Mufti Sadiq al-Ghanai. So, yeah, it looks good on paper, but politically, it's unwise. And the reason I say this is because the United Nations mission in Libya is very uneasy about these decrees, because they are feeling that decrees in that country need to come via a consensual process, as opposed to what is being seen as something top-down enforced on the population. So the objections coming in are not objections to what they represent and what they might mean. I think the objections are coming in due to the actual process itself, Peter.
Right, okay. But I guess some might say that these slashing of government spending is not terrible. Shutting embassies, cancelling scholarships, limiting official travel. Or is there something behind this austerity push?
Yeah, the austerity approach, I think, is just due to the fact that whatever parties in Libya need some cold, hard cash, and those are the reasons we're told. As for, yes, and that has been, you are correct, that's been another move coming out of Libya. The Prime Minister in Tripoli. Now, Tripoli, as we know, is in the west. That's the GNU, so that's one faction. And I think what we have to remember is that Tripoli has a lot of the old systems and relics of the Gaddafi regime. And when Gaddafi was in power, he had a very generous rollout of bursaries. In South Africa, for example, there were a huge amount of Libyans studying medicine in South Africa and studying other subjects such as political science, etc., at South African universities even. But I think what's happened is that this relic of Gaddafi, a good one, has resulted in a measure of corruption between the lines. Tripoli claims it's been saved something like $500 million, which is a lot of money. But when you hear stories of students studying for 15 to 20 years, I think you can begin to smell something of a rat. So apparently those who are studying can finish their studies, but otherwise the whole project's going to be canned. I can't see that going down as a very popular move, but desperate strokes or desperate votes, I suppose, in terms of what's going on in Libya. And, of course, also conferences. And during Gaddafi's time as well, I myself can remember going to numerous conferences in Libya until 2011. So I think this is perhaps a relic of the Gaddafi regime. Maybe it's a good thing. Tripoli does need money, and we just have to hope that this money is not wasted, doesn't go into that dark rabbit hole of corruption.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Sudan now. General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan has reshuffled senior cabinet posts there, appointing new ministers of cabinet affairs and foreign affairs. Is this an attempt to reassert control of, or maybe appease factions?
Yeah, you're correct in your observation, trying to appease factions, trying to assert control. But To be honest with you, I'm not too sure where it's going to go to, how far it's going to go, and who exactly it's ultimately going to satisfy. Because Sudan at the moment is the problem child, quote unquote, in Africa at the moment. I mean, the population of Sudan is about 50 million, but 15 million people in Sudan, that's more than 1/5 of the population, has been internally displaced due to the conflict between the SAF and the Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary organization that has displaced 15 million people to the west of the country in the Darfur region. And at the moment, Sudan is facing serious famine. And the tragedy that lies here is that this famine is more man-induced than climate-induced. And then just sort of to top it on, to just increase the headache, we've got a very, very nervous scenario down in South Sudan.
Okay, let's go to Tunisia now. Actually, I'm fascinated always by the president there, Kais Saied. I mean, he is a dictator of note, and he's showing much of the Ben Ali era kind of governance. We're seeing, though, that protests have erupted, accusing Kais Saied of weaponizing the judiciary and police to silence his critics. What do you reckon's driving this wave of anger?
Well, I mean, in Tunisia, the Arab Spring post of Tunisia has now slid off the wall and into the bin. I mean, Tunisia was the country in which everybody laid a lot of hope after 2011 and the Arab Spring for democracy to actually work, which did work for a while, and then it basically imploded due to internal conflict. So you've got Kais Saied, as you correctly observe, going and slipping and sliding into the era of Ben Ali, who ruled from about 87 to 2011. And it was a terrible rule, because I can remember interviewing some political prisoners that Ben Ali had put into jails and showing me their torture wounds, and it was horrible. And what underlines, I think, the crisis in Syria is the fact that the 83-year-old Rashid Ghannouchi, who is the icon of Tunisian democracy through his Ennahda party, has now spent 2 years behind bars. And his family is seriously concerned about his health, but the fact that an icon is behind bars tells us about the conflict. And of course, Tunisia is not unlike South Africa in terms of the economy, a very slow growth rate, growing unemployment, a youth bulge. 30% of the population is young, so there's lots of unrest, unhappiness from young people. So at the moment, I think Tunisia is basically on the slow boil.
I mean, his behavior seems maybe to be escalating, but this isn't new, his extreme way of dealing with things. What is it that people are seeing? One gets a sense that before he could do no wrong no matter what he did, but sentiment is shifting, isn't it?
No, it is, and very quickly. And the thing is that Tunisia really needs to sort itself out, because Tunisia's economy, as I've just said, it's on the brink. For the first half of this year, their growth was almost negative. I think it was about 0.6%. Reminds us of home, doesn't it? But nonetheless, in Tunisia, they really have to get things going. Oil and gas is one of their big money spinners, but they haven't been doing very well there. Agriculture sector, drought, and you've got almost a perfect storm starting to occur. And I think Kais Saied's increasing crackdowns are a result of his nervousness, because he knows what happened to Ben Ali, and he certainly doesn't want the same to happen to him. He doesn't want to have to leave home in an airplane full of gold.
Yeah, here's a story that we sort of tried to unpack earlier this week. Algeria's proposed military mobilization bill, and it sparked some debate, especially given ongoing tensions with Morocco and Mali. What do you reckon is behind this move? Another analyst said that it was Algeria warning the region in particular.
Yeah, Algeria is another important North African country. It has a huge territory, and perhaps one could suggest that the mounting militarization in Algeria, number one, is to protect this huge territory and infiltration into the Sahara, which is sort of bulges out to the south of Algeria. And of course, Algeria, it's a nervous neighborhood. You've got Libya, which we've just discussed. You've got Tunisia, and Libya and Tunisia right now are not exactly havens of stability. So you've got this taking out Algeria. Also, Algeria's got a massive youth bulge. And I think, again, like Tunisia and Libya, I think the leaders in Algeria are getting extremely nervous going forward.
One gets a sense that these North African governments are trying to balance internal unrest with external alliances. And I wonder if there's a reordering of influence playing out in North Africa with traditional Western players perhaps losing some ground there.
Yes, I mean, there are just so many players in North Africa. There's too many to mention. You know, you have the United States, you've got United Arab Emirates, you've got Qatar, you've got Germany, and I'm just mentioning some of the big boys in town in North Africa. And I think there's another dimension to North Africa that we often forget, and that is that most of those countries face into the Mediterranean Sea, and as a result, it's almost as if they're looking out onto the doorstep of Europe. And some of them are not comfortable when we say they're African. And I think what plays into the dimensions of North Africa is that it looks more into Europe than it actually does into Africa, because we've got a huge barrier of the Sahara in between North Africa and the rest of us.
All right, so you mentioned the economic strain in Tunisia. Egypt's not doing well either, and their situation remains pretty fragile, despite reforms and IMF support. Are we seeing any pressure from the grassroots or any political consequences maybe from the country's continued financial strain?
You know, people you speak to in Egypt are not going to say very much. General Sisi has a very, very iron fist ruling in Egypt at the moment. So people are very reluctant to speak out. I mean, we wouldn't be able to make a telephone call to an analyst in Cairo and get a real story because of the fear of imprisonment. Egypt is also being battered by what's happening in the Middle East, because Egypt is one of the players in terms of the Gazan conflict, the border into Gaza. Lots of pressures there from the United States, from Israel, etc. But of course, you've also got the fact that Sisi has embarked on some massive development projects. I mean, Cairo is expanding massively. There's lots of developments going on in Cairo, but you need money for it, and you need an economy for it. And I think General Sisi is going to have to be very careful going forward, because despite the permanent crackdown, again since the Arab Spring, Egyptians might well lose their fear, and then who knows what will happen.
All right, and the final question, not really a news item, but somebody who knows the region quite well, I'm quite curious about the dynamic. Traditionally, there's been this North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa drama that's played out, and black Africans and North Africans perhaps on different sides of the bridge. What do you reckon is the mood? Morocco at one stage left the African Union, didn't want to be part of Africa's story. What's your reading of North Africa versus the rest of the continent?
North Africa, as I say, because the Sahara sort of cuts Africa in half, as it were, they, number one, they're also part of the Arab world. And number two, their front porch is basically the Mediterranean and Europe. So you'll always find this uneasiness at them being called African. I mean, in the Sudan itself, in Darfur, you've got a conflict between one group that is Arab and one group that is African, so-called, very crude definitions. And that was the core of the conflict in Darfur, the original core, apart from the fact that climate change is affecting Sudan quite seriously. So, yeah, it's a strange dynamic, and it always amazes me, you know, when you go to the capitals of these North African countries, if you say that they're African, sometimes they get offended, which amazes me.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it. It's always good talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time and your insights.
Only a pleasure.
All right, that's Shafiq Morton, who's a journalist, author, a specialist across North Africa, Middle East and the Far East, speaking to us there about big stories in North Africa at the moment. It's 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines. Here's Nolutando Zulu.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
The South African National Defence Force has commenced with the phased withdrawal of soldiers from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Today is the D-Day for Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to present a draft peace deal as agreed in a U.S. brokered deal last week. And the World Health Organization has warned of great disruption to global health funding following the freezing of most foreign aid by U.S. President Donald Trump. I'll have this and more at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now to find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. Let me tell you what happened. Amajita are up and running at the 2026 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON tournament as they beat Tanzania 1-0 in the second qualifiers played at the Suez Canal Authority Stadium in Ismailia. Amajita needed a goal from man of the match Shaquille April to seal the victory, and they ground out the result against a very tough and physical East African opponent. Amajita head coach Raymond Mdaga says they had to dig deep in this game to get a result.
We knew that for us to get the result, we need to grind. It needs character. Sometimes it's beyond tactics. It's about the character of the boy, the fighting spirit. They are a good team, honestly. They believe in their strength, they play to their strength, and they've got two strong players physically, so they played crosses. They made it difficult for us because we are good on the ground and they wanted us to chase those long balls, so it was quite difficult. But other than that, we appreciate the character of the boys to stay with that 1-0 that we scored early until the end of the game.
After losing the opening game against the host Egypt 1-0, having missed several goal-scoring opportunities, Mdaga made 4 changes to his starting lineup for this game and says it was informed by how he was approaching this game.
It was about more of the physicality of the opponents. You see, Egyptians are not that physical. They play good football, good tactically, so you can put your players who are good in terms of playing the ball. It's match to match, but when you have got players who are a bit physical, you need character. You see, the number 7 that got the man of the match, it's somebody who plays with character, somebody who can fight. You need players who can stand in terms of any challenges that come across physically or anywhere in the field of play. So we had to make those changes and put the other players on the line.
Now, rugby news. The South Africans national under-20 rugby team had to work very hard at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium to start their campaign with a 36-25 victory over the Pumas of Argentina. The hosts were 15-20 down at the break, and following a try by Argentina shortly after the restart, the visitors took a 10-point lead, but the Junior Boks fought back with 3 converted tries without conceding another point to leave the 9,000-strong crowd very happy. The Junior Boks' next assignment is against Australia on the 6th of May at the same venue, where the game will start at 1600 hours Central African Time. On to basketball. Senegal's AC Ville de Dakar, stunned Basketball Africa League BAL defending champions Pedro de Luanda of Angola 65-64 in match day 3 of the Sahara Conference at the Dakar Arena. Magda Goye had 16 points and 11 rebounds. Abdoulaye Haruna added 15 points and Atta Majok added 14 points and 6 rebounds as the Senegalese debutants collected their second win of the competition. Patrick Gardner led Pedro with 19 points and 9 rebounds. Dakar nearly squandered their morale-boosting victory after committing 2 consecutive 8-second violations in the final moments of the game. But Pedro de Luanda failed to capitalize on it. And finally, with tennis news, reigning champion Iga Swiatek suffered a crushing 6-1 semi-final defeat by Coco Gauff, with the American to face world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka for the Madrid Open title. The second-ranked Swiatek, a 5-time Grand Slam winner, dropped serve 5 times against Gauff as the pole fell in 64th minute. The world number 4 secured 2 more breaks in the second set and wrapped up victory at the first time of asking on serve to love. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. The Midnight Snack every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege.
That is just me trying to imagine myself as a backup singer for Zonke, because her music is just beautiful. As the song was playing, I was just, moving like a backup singer. You know how they are, with their hands, being so dramatic and, putting that spice into the song. So the song is called Say Now, and we love it here on the Midnight Snack. I hope you also love it.
Let's talk love, intimacy, and relationships on the Midnight Snack with Chanduko Ligege. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Time now to find out what's been happening on the business and economics front. And at the desk this morning, we say a very good morning to Tabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. Some workers in South Africa have welcomed the Progressive Domestic Workers Union's call for the establishment of a pension fund. The union wants National Treasury to set up the fund for domestic workers so that they can retire with financial security. According to Statistics South Africa, about 850,000 women are employed as domestic workers in the country. The union says it has drafted a proposal which it will hand to the Employment and Labour Department this month. Some domestic workers say a pension fund will help them greatly.
It will help us so that if we reach 60 years, we set at home, then we have something in our pockets for our children to eat and everything.
I am very happy. This means when I leave my job, I will have money to look after my children.
Meanwhile, South Africa's Progressive Domestic Workers Union says it could take up to 3 years to implement the pension fund for domestic workers. The union is championing the call for domestic workers to have money when they retire. Union producer says that the contribution structure for the pension fund will require both employer and worker to contribute. Secretary General of Producer, Tato Malega, explains.
After having this product called the pension scheme, pension fund, now we need to involve other stakeholders. Those stakeholders such as National Treasury. National Treasury will come and assist on how this product, how it will benefit, particularly the worker and mostly the government and so forth.
The proposed labour law amendments have divided South Africa's labour movements. South African Federation of Trade Unions held a separate rally from Labour Federation COSATU to mark Workers' Day yesterday. The two trade union federations have differed on proposed labour law amendments, which SAFTU says it will make it easier for employers to fire workers and harder for them to organise. The amendments are aimed at limiting compensation for certain dismissals and provide greater protection for temporary employees, among others. Speaking at the union's march in Johannesburg, SAFTU national spokesperson Newton Masuku labelled the proposed laws as an attack on workers.
COSATU maintains that we do not understand these amendments. There's nothing wrong with the amendments. They agree with them. We, on the other hand, we are saying they constitute an attack on the gains of the working class. The ease with which the employers now will be able to fire workers is something we take serious issue with.
The boss of Apple, Tim Cook, says he expects U.S. tariffs will cost his company almost $1 billion in the current quarter. That's despite President Donald Trump's decision to spare key electronics from the new import taxes. The BBC's Lili Jamali has the details.
Donald Trump wanted iPhones to be made in the U.S. Instead, what's going to happen is the vast majority of iPhones that are sold here in the U.S. will now be made in India. And the country of origin for a lot of other big products, so think Mac computers, think AirPods, iPads, the country of origin for those products sold here will now be Vietnam. Cook also said that outside of the U.S., products sold elsewhere, most of that stuff is still going to be made in China. So the desired impact that Donald Trump and his administration were hoping to have, it doesn't look like that's going to happen here.
Gold prices were poised for their worst weekly performance in more than 2 months as receding trade tensions tempered safe haven demand, while the market's focus shifted to the U.S. non-farm payrolls report due later in the day. Spot gold was steady at 3,239.15 US an ounce. Gold has lost more than 2% so far this week, the steepest weekly fall since February. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 605, Botswana 13 pula 56, Kenya 128 shilling 904, and Zambia 27 kwacha 88. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ruble 67, in Russia 81 ruble 64, India 84 rupees 62, China 7 yuan 27, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 60. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. A look at commodities markets now. Gold at $3,252 and platinum is at $965 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $62.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hogu.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, we get into our G20 fact for this day now, and that the G20 began in 1999 as a meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis. In 2008, the first G20 Leaders Summit was held to deal with the global financial crisis. To ensure discussion in the G20 reflects the interests of non-members as well as members. Each year, the G20 president invites guest countries to participate in the year's meetings, including the Leaders Summit. And that's our G20 fact for this morning, this Friday, the 2nd of April.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Still with the G20 Empower Alliance was launched this week at a gathering held in Johannesburg in South Africa. And this comes ahead of the G20 Summit, which will be held in the Southern African country later this year. Launched under the theme Uhuru, Women Building Sustainable Income and Financial Independence, the initiative is focused on promoting the active participation of women in decision-making and management within the private business sector, particularly within G20 countries. Tuto Ngobeni has more for us.
One of South Africa's commercial banks, Absa Group, hosted the launch of the G20 Empower Alliance event in Johannesburg, South Africa. The alliance is an initiative focused on promoting the active participation of women in decision-making and management within the private business sector, particularly within G20 countries. The launch announced the commencement of working groups, which are set to start forming this month. The event was attended by Eswatini's Minister of Information Communications Technology, Savannah Mazia. Addressing the women at the launch, Mazia says hosting the G20 in South Africa is a great opportunity for women.
Having the opportunity of G20 is amazing because even though it's happening in South Africa, it is a benefit for all of us. We must all use it as a position to really ensure that we take our space, not ask for it, not negotiate it, not talk about it.
Representing South Africa's government, Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Anna Moraike, sent her message of support via video through a representative of the department, Salome Baloyi. She says South Africa's G20 presidency is also for the continent and further emphasized the significance of the alliance uniting the public and private sector.
We definitely call it a continental G20 presidency because of the importance that we allude towards our continent and the work that we do as South Africa. Today marks a significant milestone in our collective journey to unlock full economic and leadership potential of women globally. Under the G20 presidency theme, which we are all aware of by now, is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. South Africa is very proud to extend support to this vital platform that I'm speaking on, the G20 Empower Alliance, which continues to unite public and private sector actors around a shared commitment to advancing women's economic representation and also leadership.
South African businesswoman, author, chancellor at the University of the Witwatersrand, and the founding chairman of the Mbekani Group, Dr. Judy Dlamini, was also part of the speaker lineup at this event. Dlamini shared her experience in a position as chancellor and how she has found a gap to address the previously disadvantaged women in academia.
I found a gap, Colleen, and what was that gap? It was transformation that is devoid of an intersectional lens, right? We find it easy to use a blanket approach when it comes to disadvantage of a people. And yet, we know that there are those that are most marginalized because of the social identities that they have. So, FAL, Female Academic Leaders Fellowship,
the other working groups that were represented at this event included the W20 or Women 20, which is an official engagement group of the G20 dedicated to gender equality and women's economic empowerment. Professor Nania Bola Mula, co-chair at W20, also highlighted the significance of working together in empowering women.
I think that W20 and G20 Empower really should work together. We can't do this on our own. Yeah. We definitely can't do this on our own. So we do have perhaps slightly different mandates and missions, but there is significant overlap. So every time I've heard Florence, and we've become quite close because we've been on a lot of platforms since December, Florence emphasizes that we have B20, which is business, private sector. We have G20 Empower, and then we have Women 20. And G20 Empower, to a large extent, should be the bridge between business and women.
G20 Empower endeavors to be the most inclusive and action-driven alliance among business and governments for accelerating women's leadership and empowerment across G20 countries. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobene in Johannesburg.
The director of the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation and co-director at Institute for Global Affairs, Professor Pamandla Zondi, has called the recently concluded two-day T20 high-level dialogue a success, marked by meaningful discussions focused on the most pressing issues. Speaking to Channel Africa on Wednesday, Zondi says there has been a strong effort to build consensus among African thought leaders on key areas of intervention ranging from financing, health and food security, trade and investment, among other things. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has the story.
The dialogue brought together a distinguished gathering of African policymakers, leading think tanks, academics and international experts to engage in critical and forward-looking conversations on the continent's evolving role in global governance, offering timely and strategic platform to reflect on Africa's priorities and articulate a shared vision for the future as South Africa hosts the G20 Summit 2025. The director of the Institute for Pan-African Thought and Conversation and co-director at Institute for Global Affairs, Professor Pamandla Zondi, elaborates.
It has been a successful conference so far on the basis that the conversations have gone on and the conversation has focused on the most critical issues. With developing consensus among African thinkers about what are the critical areas of interventions in relation to many critical issues, from financing to development, to the implementation of the SDGs, to health security, to food security, to how we improve trade and investment and how we improve financing, innovative financing for climate change, and how we push a green initiative in a manner that is sustainable and that is just.
He says South Africa's involvement of other African nations is a positive sign of expanding the African agenda.
It does send a positive signal that South Africa realizes that it cannot do this alone. And this cannot just be about South Africa, because South Africa cannot be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty, and that South Africa's own progress is inextricably linked to the progress of Africa. And it is wonderful that South Africa recognizes that, as it has done since 1994, and has put together this G20 year in a manner that makes sure that Africa is central to all of this. And we in the T20 are also following the suit, and that helps us to advance the agenda, expand the agenda, and be more inclusive in what is to be done, because the problems are broadly shared by the whole of Africa, and this is an opportunity to do this. It can only send positive signals about how South Africa sees itself and how South Africa sees its role in the world, and that it sees itself as an agent of a broader African agenda.
The Principal Program Officer at African Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators, an organ of the African Union Development Agency, Lukovi Seki, says through South Africa's G20 presidency, Africa has an agenda to build an Africa we all want.
For us as Africa, we have number one an agenda. By 2063, where we need to go, the Africa we want. And then we have to praise even South Africa because of the G20 presidency now. And even when the South Africa got the chair at the African Commission with Dr. Zuma, Excellency. So she's the one who did pioneer this Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. And for that, for us to achieve the goal we have in Agenda 2063, we have various strategies that we call frameworks. We are avoiding to call them policies because we cannot impose our member state to do what we have there, because they are sovereign. We have just to accept we provide guidance. So the African Union Commission will provide policies, and the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, where I'm coming from, will support country to implement that and to connect the implementation.
More Blessings Chidaushe, Regional Advocacy Manager at WaterAid, says the G20 Summit being held in African soil provides opportunities for Africa to have one voice.
The good thing is that the G20 is being held in an African country, and this gives us the opportunity. The issue is to say, how best do we harness a collective, unified, strong African voice to go to the G20 and say, as Africa, this is our agenda, and as Africa, this is what we want.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The United States and Ukraine have signed an agreement that would give Washington preferential access to Ukraine's critical minerals, including rare earths and other natural resources. Now, the deal includes the establishment of a joint investment fund for Ukraine's reconstruction, amid efforts by the Trump administration to secure a ceasefire that could lead to a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Showen Bryce-Peace, our correspondent in New York, reports that the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called it an historic economic partnership agreement. And this between the two countries, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund.
Tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what I'm not
You're in no position.
The agreement comes after months of at times fraught negotiations, recalling the dramatic Oval Office meeting between Presidents Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky in February, where a version of this landmark agreement was due to be signed before the relationship publicly soured, live on television. The deal is also seen as part of efforts by Kyiv to repair relations with the United States, whose president has been quite pointed with Zelensky as he presses for an elusive ceasefire. Trump had stated that he believed the U.S. should get something in return for its aid to Ukraine during the war. The deal was penned by Ukraine's first Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
Ukraine's Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal also weighed in from Kyiv, calling the agreement an international deal about joint investments into the development and restoration of Ukraine.
This is a real partnership deal. It is a deal on setting up an investment fund in Ukraine with equal managing and contribution shares. Contributions will be monetary. The American side can consider new military aid to Ukraine. I underline that this will solely be new aid as a contribution to the fund. Ukraine only makes contributions from new rents and royalties for natural resources. Our contribution will be 50%. No debts or aid that was granted to Ukraine before the deal was signed are included. It is an important achievement, and the deal only covers new contributions and new aid.
In addition to its critical minerals, the deal also has provisions for joint access to Ukraine's oil, natural gas, and other hydrocarbons, but notably provides no specific security guarantees from Washington, which is something Ukraine and Europe had been pushing for. As Ukrainians also weighed in, some more skeptical of the agreement than others. Oskana Serenko is a resident of Kyiv.
In order for this war to stop, we have to pay something. We pay with human lives and with Ukrainian resources. Feels like Ukraine is being raped by everyone, and it hurts. I think the world is very selfish. Everyone is looking for profit. Ukraine is a very good source of minerals. The deal is pure profit-seeking. I don't believe that anyone is worried about us, nor that the deal will be good for our future.
Oskana Rihorieva, also in Kyiv.
Let's hope for the deal to hold as promised. This is the beginning of U.S. support, and that this war will end finally. I think it's right to sign the deal because our people are dying. How long could it go on? My husband is at war. This is why I want the war to end.
Anastasia Zornitskaya, also in Ukraine's capital.
If there is a result after Ukraine gives away its resources to the U.S., and there is a ceasefire as Putin promised, then let them take the minerals. If the price is in human lives that we lose every day, then let them take the resources. I think this is going to be a test for Trump on keeping his promises and whether he can be trusted overall, not only by Ukrainians, but also by the people living in the U.S.
And Vita Fediuk.
I think interesting times await us.
All right, and that's how we come to the end of that report by Sherwin Brycebees. And it's time for us to look ahead and what's coming up in the second hour of the program. Asanda, Beda.
Very good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. If you've just done that, we enter into the second hour now of Africa Rise and Shine on this Friday, the 2nd of April. And we'll be looking at South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, who's in the process of establishing a judicial commission of inquiry. This to establish whether attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or the TRC. Also, tomorrow is Press Freedom Day, World Press Freedom Day, celebrated annually on May 3rd. So we'll be talking about that in this hour.
Yeah, and that's a topical subject on the continent, isn't it? Press freedom. We don't always have the best records in a number of countries.
I think we've got an example of Zimbabwe as well in that story as we unpack it.
Yeah, it's a very sad story. Okay, what do we have now?
Now we got news now at 7 o'clock, and they are with Unolutando Butelezi. And after that, we'll be Fikile Lingwati with our sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The South African National Defence Force has commenced with the phased withdrawal of soldiers from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The troops were part of the SADC and UN peace mission in the DRC. They have been trapped in Goma after M23 rebels captured the city after fierce battles with the DRC army in February. 18 SADC soldiers, including 14 SANDF members, were killed in the process. The SADC heads of state then resolved to withdraw the remaining troops following mounting pressure to pull out of the eastern Congo. The repatriation of the soldiers will go via Rwanda and Tanzania. Kayelihle Kumalo has more.
A reconnaissance was conducted by representatives from Malawi, South Africa and Tanzania last month. They confirmed that the members of the SADC mission in the DRC can drive from Goma through Rwanda to Chato in Tanzania. Thereafter, they will head to their respective countries. The SADC says this plan will ensure the safe and efficient return of personnel and key assets. The withdrawal will take place in phases, and there will be regular updates to the public regarding the safe return of the SANDF members deployed in Congo. Kayelihle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Today is the D-Day for Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to present a draft peace deal, as agreed in a U.S. brokered deal last week. The two countries' foreign ministers met in Washington with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been displaced in recent months as Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have seized swaths and mineral-rich territory in the eastern DRC. After losing territory, the government in Kinshasa turned to the U.S. for help in exchange for access to minerals. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
The DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. Qatar and the U.S. are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms.
As we approach World Hand Hygiene Day, activists are raising the alarm on health implications of the lack of resources at early childhood development. World Hand Hygiene Day is held annually on the 5th of May. The Save Lives, Clean Your Hands global campaign was launched by the World Health Organization in 2009. According to the last ECD census, only 53% of centers in South Africa have piped water, electricity and flushing toilets, while 8% have none at all. CEO of the Santa Shoebox Project, NPO, Deb Zelezniak, says that basic infrastructure to maintain good hygiene practices is severely lacking.
53% of ECDs in South Africa are fortunate enough to have piped water, which of course leaves a vast number, 47%, with none at all. And what this leads to, unfortunately, is illness, disease, due to contaminated water, due to bacteria being passed from hand to hand, for the simple reason of children not being able to wash their hands frequently enough.
The United Nations says that it has begun the first food aid distribution in the center of the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. Since civil war broke out 2 years ago, the Sudanese army has been at war with paramilitary rapid support forces. The BBC's Charles Haviland has this report.
The nature of Sudan's war, pitting the army chief against his former deputy, put the capital at the centre of bloody battles for many months. The central Khartoum neighbourhoods, where 20,000 people are at last getting food aid, include one, Al-Azhari, said to be at high risk of famine. At the same time, the UN human rights chief, Volker Turk, has said the horror unfolding in Sudan knows no bounds. He said that in North Darfur, scene of an RSF paramilitary onslaught to capture El Fasher, at least 542 civilians have been killed in 3 weeks.
Ukraine's foreign minister has welcomed a deal with the United States to jointly exploit Ukrainian mineral and fossil fuel reserves. Andriy Sybiha called it an important milestone to strengthen Ukraine's economy and security. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described it as an important step in ending the war with Russia. The BBC's John Donnison has more.
The Ukrainians feel they've got a better deal than they were hoping for, certainly a better deal than was on the table when we had that slanging match in the Oval Office. And I think the reason why it's better is that back then President Trump was talking about this being a deal that would allow Ukraine to pay back the billions of dollars of money that had been used for US military assistance over the past 3 years. Well, under this deal, that won't happen. The money that will be generated, that will be put into this investment fund, could be used for future military assistance, future humanitarian assistance, and also reconstruction in Ukraine, but they won't have to repay that debt.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in our sports headlines this hour, Rwanda Development Board and Spanish club Atletico de Madrid have announced a 3-year partnership where Visit Rwanda will become club sponsor until June 2028. In Sri Lanka, women won the toss and put South Africa into bed in the ODI series in Colombo today. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
8 minutes past 7 Central African Time. Let's talk press. Before we get to press freedom, that's going to be later. We start with the TRC Commission. So South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the process of establishing a judicial commission of inquiry to establish whether attempts were made to prevent the investigation or prosecution of apartheid-era crimes referred by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or the TRC, to the National Prosecuting Authority. Allegations of improper influence in delaying or hindering the investigation and prosecution of apartheid-era crimes have persisted from previous administrations. This is the outcome of settlement discussions in a court application brought by families of victims of apartheid-era crimes. To discuss this, we're joined on the line now by Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, who played a crucial role as a TRC commissioner then. Advocate, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
Well, I survived, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much, and thanks for making time to talk to us. To rewind, Advocate, the TRC was established back in 1996 by struggle stalwarts, former President Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, with the aim of exposing and recording apartheid-era crimes. What are some of the most prominent unresolved cases from this commission, to give all our listeners a bit of context who might not be South African?
Well, there's a whole list of cases, but then it's not even from the outcome of the TRC Commission in 1998. You will know that the mandate period of the TRC was up to 1998. And obviously, it turned out that there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And the mandate period, which was only 2 years, was hardly enough to cover all the cases. And you will remember that the TRC was supposed to investigate gross violations of human rights, and it also had an amnesty committee that determined whether people were qualifying for amnesty if they meet certain requirements. Now, when in 1998 it became clear that, the commission had to close because that was what was in the legislation. But there were still outstanding cases which had not been dealt with. Then it was given a further extension of life, except that it was only, I think, one member of the commission who was going to continue to deal with amnesty applications. That is why the matter had to, the commission's life had to be extended to incorporate provision for amnesty applications. It is out of those amnesty applications at the end of 2003 that it was then that committee, the amnesty committee, indicated in its report that there were about 300 cases which were calling for either further investigation or prosecution or both. And what then happened was that in 2003 there was no action on the part of the government because it was the executive's prerogative to carry on the recommendations of the TRC, particularly of the amnesty committee.
Why particularly now is this new inquiry being established? I mean, it's been a call for 20 years from survivors and families of apartheid-era crimes.
Well, I don't know if it is a question that I am, competent to respond to, because that is the finding that I made in the opinion that I gave when 2 years ago I was given a brief by the National Prosecuting Authorities itself independently to opine or to give an opinion as to what are the measures that ought to be taken by South Africa, obviously the government of South Africa, in connection with these TRC-related cases. Came as a very big shock, as one understands, because, as you will know, as early as 2003, the Amnesty Committee had made had concluded its own, hearings, because you see, the Amnesty Committee was the only quasi-judicial committee of the TRC. We couldn't have said in 1998 when we were shutting down the TRC and we were given 5 volumes of our report to Mandela. We couldn't then say we are also closing down the Amnesty Committee, because it was the only quasi-judicial committee of the 3 committees of the TRC. People had made applications to be, absolved in terms of the law from the heinous acts. Some of them, the murders and what have you, they were called killings, abductions, torture, and severe ill treatment. Now, those people had applied for amnesty because the law allowed them to do so. And from 1998 to 2003, those were the hearings that were held. And they had to be held because people had to know whether they were, they had to receive amnesty or they could not receive amnesty. And it took that long for that committee to now come to a conclusion that after these hearings of the Amnesty Committee, 300 cases are cases that either must be for further investigation or must be for, trial, in other words, prosecutions, or both. And that is why, therefore, I was given this brief about 2 years ago, and that was the point of departure. And for me, in the hearings, interviews that I had with members specifically of the National Prosecuting Authorities, what came through was this refrain of people who were in the National Prosecuting Authority saying, but we were interfered with.
In your view, Advocate, as we look at previous governments in South Africa, these were led by President Ramaphosa's party, the African National Congress, or the ANC. So if it is indeed found that there was an intentional blockage to investigating and prosecute apartheid-era crimes, how will this make the ANC, which already took a knock at the previous polls, look in general?
Well, I don't know if it is in my province to make a commentary on that, except that, it is there for anyone to see. Which is why I made the kind of recommendation that I gave. And I made that recommendation knowing fully well that in their nature, commissions of inquiries, are not binding. They only make recommendations. But I felt that if I gave, an opinion that said, as in fact I did, that this particular commission of inquiry must be focused. It must not seek to do everything. It must just focus on one aspect of my findings in the course of doing this NTA brief. Namely, one, that commission of inquiry must set out to find whether there was or there was no political interference. That must be it.
Yeah.
And secondly, if there was, then it must be, empowered with powers of search and seizure and powers of being able to subpoena witnesses, so that this whole thing of political interference should not just be, something that is taken aside. It must be the focus. Where was there any political interference?
On the other hand, Advocate, and I don't know if you'll be able to say your view on this one, but on the other hand, the ANC was at the forefront in fighting against apartheid and did lead South Africa to democracy. So could the move to establish an inquiry reinforce the stance that the party appreciates the pain and frustrations caused by apartheid, especially for those who fought for justice?
Yeah, well, I don't want to make that finding, and I think it is the finding that could easily be dealt with by the Commission of Inquiry I am referring to. The fact of the matter is that in the period that I was personally engaged about a year or two ago in establishing what measures, because I got a brief, and that brief was, Senator, give us your opinion as to what measures ought to be taken by the National Prosecuting Authority in relation to further investigations or, prosecution of TRC-related matters. And that was my brief.
We know also that the majority of apartheid crimes were against black people. However, there are also whites who have sought justice. For example, in the case of the Highgate Hotel massacre, where 5 white people were killed in a bar by gunmen in 1993. Have such cases been granted as much prominence?
Well, I mean, look, for quite some time, there was a lull, which is why there was this investigation was, was receiving the attention of most people, including people in your part of the world, to which broadcast. What exactly happened, and why did it take so many years for these things to be unearthed? Indeed, if I had the answer, I would have been able to give the answer. But I don't have the answer, and that's why the recommendation has been set up a specialized commission. I know that South Africans are fatigued, maybe even the whole world is fatigued with commission of inquiries, on the commission, that commission, but this commission must be to make sure now that for once and for all, the question of whether there was or was no political interference is addressed. And if it is addressed, it must establish why there was that kind of injunction to NPA operatives by people who were in the executive. Stay away from these TRC-related cases. I think people want to know why was this happening? Why did, as you say, the ANC, which was the government in power, at one stage with an overwhelming majority of 67%, why was it in their interest, if it was, that these cases, identified cases, that there should be no more investigation about these cases or no prosecution should take place? Was it because there was political interference of the executive? And if it was, it's only fair that they be given an opportunity to state their side of the story. They went that they had full citizens that the ANC, which was the government in power for a long time, that there was this delay for almost, from 2003, when the amnesty community delivered these cases that called for further prosecution or for further investigation or both.
All right, and to finalize things, if you were to answer whether the commission or what the commission needs to achieve to be seen as more than just a symbolic gesture, you'd say it needs to be focused, it needs to be specialized, it needs to be empowered.
Yes. It should have powers of search and seizure. It should have powers of issuing subpoenas for those people whom it identifies would assist them in answering this specialized, focused question.
Right.
Was there or was there no political interference? And if there was, why was that the reason?
Thank you so much. We'll leave it on that note. We really appreciate your time again here on Channel Africa, Advocate Ntsebeza.
You're welcome, ma'am.
That was Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, a South African lawyer, human rights activist, and former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or the TRC, talking to us here on Africa Rise and Shine.
My name is Neto, NETO Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhanju, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko tendele. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, asiteleli siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Now, the Kingdom of Lesotho says that it's made advances in protecting the rights of women and children against domestic violence and protecting their rights. Discriminatory laws that saw them excluded from inheritance and exposed to abuse. Now, the country made representations to the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva on Wednesday, and it says that it's making meaningful progress in the advance of human rights. Dimakatso Leshuro has the details.
The constitutional monarchy of Lesotho has been faced with a myriad of challenges, including high levels of domestic violence, increasingly violent police, food insecurity, as well as a high prevalence of HIV. The removal of PEPFAR will pose a challenge for the country to continue fighting against the disease. Leading the delegation, Justice Minister Richard Ramueletsi told the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva that the coalition government is working to improve its human rights track record amid huge problems.
Food insecurity and high prevalence rate of HIV/AIDS, among others, and this inhibits advancement of human rights. With support from WFP, the government is able to promote diversified livelihoods and income generation, especially among young people and stakeholder farmers. These efforts aim to improve food security, enhance local livelihoods, and ensure a resilient agricultural sector. Lesotho is beset with challenges such as poverty, high level of unemployment.
The country is currently undergoing its fourth Universal Periodic Review, UPR, for human rights protections along with 13 other countries. The UPR is a unique mechanism for the UNHRC member state to undergo a peer review of its human rights records every 4.5 years. Ramueletsi stated that while Lesotho observes both domestic and international laws, some human rights instruments are yet to be domesticated. The Mountain Kingdom has made strides on environmental issues through establishing legal frameworks to promote the protection of the environment, and changes to customary marriage and inheritance laws, as well as laws that deal with persons living with disabilities, are underway.
These reforms target 7 thematic areas: the constitution, judiciary, security, parliament, economic, public service, and the media. The 10th, 11th, and 12th amendment to the constitution bills have been developed, with the 10th amendment being in its advanced stage in the parliamentary process.
The Justice Minister defended the country's controversial cybersecurity law, seen as repressive to freedom of speech.
The Computer Crime Cybersecurity Bill does not in any way infringe on the freedom of expression. On the contrary, it balances the need for cybersecurity and protection of fundamental rights. The bill ensures citizens' privacy through provisions such as limitation on criminal liability for service providers and international cooperation to combat cybersecurity.
Representatives from UN member states applauded Lesotho for making progress in bringing its laws in line with the treaties of the UNHRC, but also made the following recommendations.
In the spirit of constructive dialogue, Zambia wishes to recommend the following to the delegation of Lesotho. 1. enact legislation that explicitly prohibits all forms of corporal punishment of children and adults in all settings. 2, consider amending legislation to set the minimum age for marriage at 18 years.
We remain concerned about the persistently high levels of violence against women and girls, including the prevalence of domestic violence. In the view of the above, Slovenia would like to recommend to Lesotho to strengthen integrated child-sensitive and gender-responsive protection services and to allocate resources to implement the 5-year National Prevention and Response Plan on Violence Against Children.
South Africa wishes to respectfully recommend that Lesotho consider the following recommendations. Expedite the process of establishing the operationalization of the National Human Rights Institution in compliance with the Paris Principles. Redouble efforts to ensure the equal representation and participation of women in public and political life, and bolster measures to improve conditions of detention.
Switzerland welcomes the delegation from Lesotho and recommends that measures are taken to effectively implement the 2024 law on the administration of goods, property and inheritance, ensuring the equality in inheritance regardless of the gender of the heirs.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
It's 7:30 Central African Time, and it's time for our news headlines. And at the news desk this morning, Nolutando Butalezi.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Police in South Africa have opened a case of culpable homicide to establish how 3 Free State Province police officers died. The constables were travelling from Bloemfontein to Limpopo Province on deployment. The South African National Defence Force has commenced with the phased withdrawal of the soldiers from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The troops were part of the SADC and UN peace mission in the DRC. They have been trapped in Goma after the M23 rebels captured the city after fierce battles. And the World Health Organization has warned of great disruption of global health funding following the freezing of most foreign aid by U.S. President Donald Trump. I'll have this and more at the top of the hour.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Right, let's find out about Rwanda Development Board and Spanish club Atletico de Madrid, who are having announced a 3-year partnership, as we get our sports update with Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And we begin with the Atletico de Madrid players were for the first time seen training in Visit Rwanda kits during their midweek training session, hours after Rwanda Development Board announced a partnership deal with the Spanish club. The agreement, which runs until June 2028, will see the Visit Rwanda brand feature on the La Liga club's training kits, match jerseys, and across the Metropolitano Stadium. Atletico de Madrid are currently third in La Liga with 66 points, 10 points behind leaders Barcelona and 6 behind second place Real Madrid, with 5 games left to close the season. They visit Deportivo Alaves at the Ndoro Stadium on Saturday. Amajita are up and running at the 2026 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON tournament as they beat Tanzania 1-0 in the second qualifiers played at the Suez Canal Authority Stadium in Ismailia. Amajita needed a goal from man of the match Shaquille April to seal this victory, and they ground out the result against a very tough and physical East African opponent. Amajita head coach Raymond Mdaga says they had to dig deep in this game to get a result.
We knew that for us to get the result, we need to grind. It needs character. Sometimes it's beyond tactics. It's about the character of the boy, the fighting spirit. They are a good team, honestly. They believe in their strength, they play to their strength, and they've got two strong players physically, so they played crosses. They made it difficult for us because we are good on the ground and they wanted us to chase those long balls, so it was quite difficult. But other than that, we appreciate the character of the boys to stay with that 1-0 that we scored early until the end of the game.
After losing their opponent, losing their first game against the host Egypt 1-0, having missed several goal-scoring opportunities, Mdaga made 4 changes to his starting lineup for this game and says it was informed by how he was approaching this game.
Exactly, it was about more of the physicality of the opponents. You see, Egyptians are not that physical. They play good football, good tactically, so you can put your players who are good in terms of playing the ball. It's match to match, but when you have got players who are a bit physical, you need character. You see, the number 7 that got the man of the match, it's somebody who plays with character, somebody who can fight. You need players who can stand in terms of any challenges that come across physically or anywhere in the field of play. So we had to make those changes and put the other players on the line.
Now, cricket news. Sri Lanka women won the toss and put South Africa into bat in their ODI Tri-Series match at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. Proteas women all-rounder Anne-Marie Daxon says they look forward to a competitive second match. South Africa looks for redemption, coming from a 15-run defeat to India on Tuesday. Speaking about this game, Daxon says they let themselves down in small moments against India and believe they will not repeat the same mistakes against the host. Now, the Proteas, as we speak, are 56 for the loss of 2 wickets. So we'll see later on. Now, let's end it with Senegal's ASC Ville de Dakar, Stand Basketball Africa League BAL defending champions Pedro de Luanda of Angola 65-64 in match day 3 of the Sahara Conference at the Dakar Arena. Then the victory, Dakar nearly squandered their morale-boosting victory after committing 2 consecutive 8-second violations in the final moments of the game. But Pedro de Luanda failed to capitalize on it. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwena@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Time now to focus once again on business and economics as we say good morning to Tabiso Lihuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. South Africa's Electricity Minister, Dr. Hussein Ramokgopa, says Africa is ready to enter into partnerships as the world transitions to green energy sources. Ramokgopa delivered a keynote address at the opening of the second G20 Energy Transition Working Group meeting in Cape Town yesterday. The aim of the 3-day meeting is to bring together industry role players from across the world. They are discussing advancing sustainable energy transitions, fostering essential cooperation and sharing knowledge. Ramokgopa says Africa is endowed with the skills and resources to make it an equal partner in transitioning to clean energy sources.
Africa has the youngest population, the greatest solar potential, and the fastest growing demand for energy services. We are not the last frontier for development. We are the next frontier of opportunity. We welcome partnerships that view African countries not merely as recipients of energy investments, but as co-creators of the solutions needed for a global just transition.
Some workers in South Africa have welcomed the Progressive Domestic Workers Union's call for the establishment of a pension fund. The union wants National Treasury to set up the fund for domestic workers so that they can retire with financial security. According to Statistics South Africa, about 850,000 women are employed as domestic workers in the country. The union says it has drafted a proposal which it will hand to the Employment and Labour Department this month. Some domestic workers say a pension fund would help them greatly.
It will help us so that if we reach 60 years, we sit at home, then we have something in our pockets for our children to eat and everything.
I am very happy. This means when I leave my job, I will have money to look after my children.
Meanwhile, South Africa's Progressive Domestic Workers Union says it could take up to 3 years to implement the pension fund for domestic workers. The union is championing the call for workers to have money when they retire. Producer says the contribution structure for pension fund will require both the employer and worker to contribute. The Secretary General, Tato Maleka, explains.
After having this product called the pension scheme, pension fund, now we need to involve other stakeholders. Those stakeholders such as National Treasury. National Treasury will come and assist on how this product, how it will benefit particularly the worker and mostly the government and so forth.
The boss of Apple, Tim Cook, says he expects U.S. tariffs will cost his company almost $1 billion in the current quarter. That's despite President Donald Trump's decision to spare key electronics from the new import taxes. The BBC's Lily Jamali has the details.
Donald Trump wanted iPhones to be made in the U.S. Instead, what's going to happen is the vast majority of iPhones that are sold here in the U.S. will now be made in India. And the country of origin for a lot of other big products, so think Mac computers, think AirPods, iPads. The country of origin for those products sold here will now be Vietnam. Cook also said that outside of the U.S., products sold elsewhere, most of that stuff is still going to be made in China. So the desired impact that Donald Trump and his administration were hoping to have, it doesn't look like that's going to happen here.
Gold prices are poised for their worst weekly performance in more than 2 months as receding trade tensions tempered safe haven demand, while the market's focus shifted to the U.S. non-farm payrolls report due later in the day. Spot gold was steady at 3,239.15 US an ounce. Gold has lost more than 2% so far this week, the steepest weekly fall since last February. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 605. Botswana 13.56 Kenya 128 shilling 904, and Zambia 27 kwacha 88. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 real 67. Russia 81 rubles 64. India 84 rupees 62. In China 71 27, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 60. $1 in Britain, yes, it will cost you 75 pence. 88 to the euro. A look at commodities markets: gold $3,052 and platinum at $965 per ounce. Brand crude oil $62.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. músicos. Lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
43 minutes past 7 Central African time it is. If you've just joined us here on Rise and Shine, remember you can find us on our social media platforms. Our handles across the platforms of X, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at Channel Africa 1, and then on Facebook we are Channel Africa. Let's continue with some news then. Business leaders gathered in Johannesburg, South Africa for the Black Business Indaba. The two-day event is being held under the theme Uniting Black Business for Global Impact. The event focuses on key issues such as transformation, economic inclusion, job creation, and strategies to strengthen global influence. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samusa has more.
In the heart of South Africa's largest township, Soweto, entrepreneurs are coming together to explore ways to transform black-owned businesses into key drivers of employment. But what does meaningful transformation look like for black-owned businesses in today's economy? Michael Moloi is the National PRO of Black Business Unity.
Wow, that's a loaded question, to be honest. It would mean that, and that's why I want to have this kind of roadshows every 3 months. So whatever we come out with here, we are going to be asked the Prof to say, Prof, we've heard what you say, let's create a strategy and a plan. And then every 3 months, we are going to analyze how far are you from inclusivity? How many people how many jobs have we created? How many new entrepreneurs have we created? And is there a plan in place to keep them sustainable? So this relationship with Prof and many other academia is going to help us to make sure that we do planning and we do actions, because we're going to be monitoring ourselves every 3 months.
Moloi shares some of the biggest barriers still hindering transformation in the private sector and how it can be overcome.
I think we lack unity, unity of action, unity of purpose, because we have everything that we need. If you talk about, for example, the 500 million that has been announced by the government, that money is there, but we have to make sure as organized business that we assist our people to apply for this money. Number one, you must also monitor the process of application. It must not be somebody applies today, 6 months later they've not been answered. Then the next year they find the budget is finished. So we're going to be looking at that. And we as business also have come up with our own money, and that we are trying to mesh, or even better, what government is offering. So we are excited for the next 3 months what's going to happen. We just can't wait. We are ready to go. But we don't want to go without proper advice. And that's why we've invited profs and doctorates. So it's going to be exciting the whole day today.
Professor Lebohang Matole says there's a need for effective government and private sector collaboration to drive inclusive economic growth.
Well, firstly, very important that the two must communicate. In fact, it's one of the issues we'll be discussing today, that we are living in isolation, and this has never been the best time for us to get together. We have never needed each other more than we do right now. So I believe that, I feel that sometimes we want to tackle issues on a broader scale without first taking care of the minute, the small details that makes our everyday life.
Stakeholders agree that collaboration, access to finance, and diversified policy implementation will be crucial in driving real change. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Soweto, Johannesburg.
7:47 Central African time. Let's take a look at this story now. Where are we going, Asanda?
We were supposed to have a live on the Press Freedom Day. Of course, that's yesterday. World Press Freedom Day is happening tomorrow. which is the 13th of May.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that in just a bit. I'm not sure if our guest is ready at the moment, but this is something that we reflect on every year. And as you said earlier when we were speaking about it, it's quite important for us in Africa to have this discussion, because we know that we continue to face challenges as media on our continent.
Yeah, indeed. Every year on the 3rd of May, the world does mark World Press Freedom Day, a moment to reflect on the importance of independent journalism and the challenges that media workers continue to face across the globe. Declared by the UN General Assembly in 1993, the day serves as a reminder that freedom of expression is the backbone of any democracy. And this year's commemoration comes amid growing concerns about journalist safety, media repression, and disinformation. In Zimbabwe, for example, journalist Blessed Mhlanga remains in detention over interviews deemed critical of political figures, raising fresh alarms over press freedom in that country. Well, to explore these concerns and the state of media freedom in Zimbabwe and Africa at large, we're now joined by Njabula Ncube, who's a coordinator of the Zimbabwe National Editors Forum. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir.
Let's start with Zimbabwe. It hasn't scored well in the World Press Freedom Index for a good number of decades now, sadly. Has the situation not improved? Is it business as usual that it is really difficult being a journalist in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. More so when you have a journalist, Blessed Mhlanga, in prison for more than 60 days now. So it actually shows how bad the state of the media is in Zimbabwe. We're expecting better with the so-called new dispensation, but it looks like it's more of the same. It's very sad. There's nothing to celebrate when we have one of our own incarcerated, held without trial. So it goes to show the world how bad the state is of affairs in terms of media freedom in Zimbabwe.
Sadly, it's not just Zimbabwe, is it? I mean, there's a number of countries across the continent that follows a similar pattern of harassing journalists, especially those that are exposing criminality, corruption, and maybe are critical of the governments and of the countries that they work in.
Yeah, we rank as one of those rogue states in terms of press freedom, and I'm sure the case of Blessed Mhlanga has been well articulated and publicized. It goes to show where we are. It's not surprising that we rank very low. It's all clear for everyone to see why we rank lowly in the ranking. We're hoping for the better, but unfortunately that's where we are.
Apart from the obvious harassment of being arrested and detained without a trial, what other pressures are journalists facing? Is there self-censorship that takes place, that people, because of the fear, they themselves, journalists, start to write in a different way?
Yeah, well, apart from what you are reading around the Mr. Mhlanga space, we still have media laws that impinge on press freedom. For instance, we just recently had the Broadcasting Services Act, which actually now demands that anyone who owns a car must have a radio license.
Wow.
So these are some of the laws that put Zimbabwe in the bad light. We wanted that 45 years of independence, the press in Zimbabwe should be allowed to be free, enjoy the fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, but we don't have that. So we are saying, first, Zimbabwe needs more freedom. It should be allowed to operate freely. Unfortunately, it's not happening. Another issue is the issue of the economy. The economy is actually not kind to our media. Our media is suffocating because of a great economy. So these are some of the issues that we're grappling with as we mark World Press Freedom Day today.
Do you think the public understands just how constrained the media is in the country, or do they just accept that it is what it is? Because we often talk about the Fourth Estate, journalism being a pillar of democracy.
Yeah, the public do sympathize with the media, but unfortunately, survival takes precedence. People want to put food on the table. They would rather sacrifice buying a newspaper, for instance, and buying bread. They would rather go for bread and not the media. So the media is in a catch-22 situation. It's survival of the fittest, and the media can't survive under the current circumstances. Hence, we have deterioration in terms of media standards, in terms of media appreciation, in terms of standing up for the media. Yeah, so it's a very, very, very tough situation.
Do you think that these authorities are blurring the lines between social media and journalism in its more traditional form, and that everyone's being lumped in the same breath, that they're trying to stop the dissent of individual commentators, content creators, that kind of thing, and then traditional journalists are being brought into the same camp and being punished in the same way?
Yeah. There's a thin dividing line now. Social media activists are now being seen as journalists, and they're the ones now walking the limelight. And we in Zimbabwe, we have very unfortunate situation in that social media influencers are now being given prominence by the ruling party. They are being paid to stroll people, to stroll the opposition, to stroll journalists with the support of the ruling party. So we have the social media activists that are now prominent and are given prominence, and their views on Twitter, on X, and other social media platforms are being highlighted, and they are being rewarded as journalists, yet we are not journalists.
So let me get this right. You're saying that the state pays social media influencers to spread propaganda?
Yes. We've paid trolls. Paid the monthly allowance. They've been bought latest mobile phones just to tackle the ruling party's propaganda.
What are you able to do as the Zimbabwe National Editors Forum to try and help journalists and save the media freedom?
Yes, we have gone all out to say there is a difference between political activists that are paid as trolls and trained journalists. We're going out on an awareness to really get people to understand that doing media literacy. But unfortunately, we are handicapped by resources, material and financial resources for our media literacy to get traction and currency.
Perhaps finally, I'm sure that you communicate with other editors' forums in the region and further afield. Are you finding that they are facing similar struggles? Are there trends that are playing out across the continent and in the region similar to Zimbabwe?
Not in our neighborhood, not in South Africa, not in Botswana, not in Zambia, not in Malawi. Our situation is unique. We hope that our regional colleagues understand our situation and come on board to try and help us get out of this turmoil.
I mean, the way you're describing things, it sounds like apartheid-era Ian Smith regime type of media suppression.
Precisely. We have actually kept at it rightly. That's where we are.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there, and let's just hope that things change, because media, very important role that it plays in society and democracy. Thanks so much indeed for your time, Njabulo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Njabulo Ncube, coordinator of the Zimbabwe National Editors Forum, speaking to us ahead of World Press Freedom Day. And it's not a pretty picture in Zimbabwe, sadly.
Hour of Rise and Shine. We're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. My name is Asanda Beda.
Asanda Beda, I'm Peter Ndoro, and 1 hour to the weekend. Yay! Yeah, thanks so much indeed for tuning in. We're streaming live on www.channelafrica.co.za. You can also catch us on our app. Just go into your app store and look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and look for Channel Africa. And coming up this half hour, we're trying to look at a couple of things. What do we have?
We're going to go over to the DRC. I feel like we talk about the DRC every day, but it's an important story because there's a launch and a bid now against former President Joseph Kabila. The country wants to remove his long-time immunity, so that he can face trials. So we're going to be talking to Dr. Charles Nyukonge, who is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst, and see how possible that can be. And of course, that story and more coming up in this last hour.
But first,
let's get our news update. Here is Nolutando Butelezi with the details, and then Fikile Lingwati will follow with the sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Police in South Africa have opened a case of culpable homicide to establish how 3 Free State Province police officers died. The constables Cebekhulu Linda, Keamogetswe Bais and Boipelo Senoge were travelling from Bloemfontein to Limpopo Province on deployment. Police addressed the media at the Hennep's River, where the bodies of the 3 were found this week, as well as their vehicle. National Police spokesperson Atlenda Mate says that they will commence in a forensic investigation of the vehicle.
Suspicion is that these constables may have plunged into the river as a result of a vehicle accident, but we are investigating this. Our vehicle accident unit is in possession of the vehicle that was retrieved yesterday. They will start working on this particular vehicle this morning, and hopefully they'll be able to give us the answers that we've been looking for as to what exactly happened.
The South African National Defence Force has commenced with the phased withdrawal of soldiers from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The troops were part of the SADC and UN peace mission in the DRC. They have been trapped in Goma after M23 rebels captured the city after fierce battles with the DRC army in February. 18 SADC soldiers, including 14 SANDF members, were killed in the process. The SADC heads of state then resolved to withdraw the remaining troops following mounting pressure to pull out of the eastern Congo. The repatriation of the soldiers will go via Rwanda and Tanzania. Kayelihle Kumalo has more.
A reconnaissance was conducted by representatives from Malawi, South Africa and Tanzania last month. They confirmed that the members of the SADC mission in the DRC can drive from Goma through Rwanda to Chato in Tanzania. Thereafter they will head to their respective countries. The SADC says this plan will ensure the safe and efficient return of personnel and key assets. The withdrawal will take place in phases, and there will be regular updates to the public regarding the safe return of the SANDF members deployed in Congo. Kayelihle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, today is the D-Day for Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to present a draft peace deal as agreed in a U.S.-brokered deal last week. The two countries' foreign ministers met in Washington with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been displaced in recent months as Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have seized swaths and mineral-rich territory in the eastern DRC. After losing territory, the government in Kinshasa turned to the U.S. for help in exchange for access to minerals. The BBC's Will Ross reports.
The DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. Qatar and the US are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms.
The World Health Organization has warned of great disruption to global health funding following the freezing of most foreign aid by U.S. President Donald Trump. The U.S. has traditionally been by far the UN's top funder. The BBC's Imogen Falks reports.
The departure of the US and funding cuts by other countries is expected to mean a 20% reduction in the WHO's budget. There will be job losses, and global health programmes from HIV/AIDS prevention to tackling malaria will shrink. The WHO agrees that poorer countries should be more self-reliant, but says the sudden withdrawal of funding is creating chaos, with treatment programmes for 140 million people already stopped.
India's human rights body is investigating reports that more than 100 children fell ill from eating a school lunch after a dead snake was found in the food. The National Human Rights Commission says that the cook reportedly still served the lunch despite removing the dead animal from it. The commission says that about 500 children are believed to have been served the meal in the city of Mokama in the Bihar state, eastern India. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And in our sports headlines, the Bafana Bafana bracing themselves for a tough CHAN qualifier against Malawi on Saturday. And Senegal's ASC Ville de Dakar stunned Basketball Africa League defending champions Pedro de Luanda of Angola. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwena@sabc.co.za. That's MOKOENATA @SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani Nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mu nyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti state of national address imene a president Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mnyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Pasama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
The United States and Ukraine have signed an agreement that would give Washington preferential access to Ukraine's critical minerals, including rare earths and other natural resources. The deal includes the establishment of a joint investment fund for Ukraine's reconstruction amid efforts by the Trump administration to secure a ceasefire that could lead to a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Sherwin Bryce-Peace reports that U.S. Treasury General Scott Bessent called it a historic economic partnership agreement between the two countries, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
You're in no position.
The agreement comes after months of at times fraught negotiations, recalling the dramatic Oval Office meeting between Presidents Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky in February, where a version of this landmark agreement was due to be signed before the relationship publicly soured, live on television. The deal is also seen as part of efforts by Kyiv to repair relations with the United States, whose president has been quite pointed with Zelensky as he presses for an elusive ceasefire. Trump had stated that he believed the U.S. should get something in return for its aid to Ukraine during the war. The deal was penned by Ukraine's first Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
Ukraine's Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal also weighed in from Kyiv, calling the agreement an international deal about joint investments into the development and restoration of Ukraine.
This is a real partnership deal. It is a deal on setting up an investment fund in Ukraine with equal managing and contribution shares. Contributions will be monetary. The American side can consider new military aid to Ukraine. I underline that this will solely be new aid as a contribution to the fund. Ukraine only makes contributions from new rents and royalties for natural resources. Our contribution will be 50%. No debts or aid that was granted to Ukraine before the deal was signed are included. It is an important achievement, and the deal only covers new contributions and new aid.
In addition to its critical minerals, the deal also has provisions for joint access to Ukraine's oil, natural gas and other hydrocarbons, but notably provides no specific security guarantees from Washington, which is something Ukraine and Europe had been pushing for. As Ukrainians also weighed in, some more skeptical of the agreement than others. Oskana Serenko is a resident of Kyiv.
In order for this war to stop, we have to pay something. We pay with human lives and with Ukrainian resources. Feels like Ukraine is being raped by everyone, and it hurts. I think the world is very selfish. Everyone is looking for profit. Ukraine is a very good source of minerals. The deal is pure profit-seeking. I don't believe that anyone is worried about us, nor that the deal will be good for our future.
Oskana Rihorieva, also in Kyiv.
Let's hope for the deal to hold as promised. This is the beginning of U.S. support and that this war will end finally. I think it's right to sign the deal because our people are dying. How long could it go on? My husband is at war. This is why I want the war to end.
Anastasia Zonitskaya, also in Ukraine's capital.
If there is a result after Ukraine gives away its resources to the U.S., and there is a ceasefire as Putin promised, then let them take the minerals. If the price is in human lives that we lose every day, then let them take the resources. I think this is going to be a test for Trump on keeping his promises and whether he can be trusted overall, not only by Ukrainians, but also by the people living in the U.S.
And Vita Fediuk.
I think interesting times await us. The deal has an advantage, because I've heard that we will receive weapons, and it is very important for our army. And maybe in the future there will be certain advantages in cooperation with the U.S.
The agreement does guarantee new deliveries of American weapons, including air defense systems, and according to Ukrainian officials, their cost will be credited to the Joint Investment Fund. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha also indicated that the agreement marked an important milestone in Ukraine's U.S. strategic partnership aimed at strengthening his country's economy and security. I'm Sherman Bryce-Pease in New York.
Almost 8:15 Central African Time. Let's go to the DRC now, where authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have launched a bid to strip former President Joseph Kabila of his immunity so he can face trial on charges of supporting the M23 insurgency in the country's east. Kabila led the DRC for 18 years after succeeding his father, Laurent, who was shot dead in 2001. After stepping down, he was given the title of Senator for Life, which gives him legal immunity. Now, in order to pursue a legal case against Kabila, DRC's military prosecutor has asked the Senate to overturn his lifelong immunity. To discuss this, we're joined on the line by Dr. Charles Nyuikonge, who is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this morning? Hello, Doctor, are you there? Dr. Nyuikonge? All right, we don't seem to be getting through to the doctor. We're going to try and dial him back again and talk about this new development, I guess, as far as the Democratic Republic is concerned, around stripping former President Joseph Kabila of his immunity so he can face trial on charges of supporting the M23 insurgency. Doctor, are you there now?
I am right here, Asanda. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for making time. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well, and thank you to your listeners.
Thanks for the time that you've made for us. This current lifetime immunity that former President Kabila enjoys, was it because of his titles as former statesman and senator, or as a result of him stepping down from his position?
It was a stabilization effort so as to bring together the whole country after Kabila stepped down, following much controversy of his long and extended leadership.
So what legal protections does Kabila get shielded from as a result of this immunity?
He gets shielded from immunity, from prosecution, and he continues to enjoy his benefits as a former president. So the stripping of these immunities actually open him up for prosecution and for some of his actions as president to be put to question.
What are the possibilities that this lifelong immunity can now be revoked, and what processes would be involved?
The processes of revoking the immunities have to go through the parliament, and I see that going through in part because the political will at the moment seems to be tilting towards that direction.
How much power does his opponents have then in making this a reality? Would it not require a new law to be signed in order to hold?
That new law would have to be promulgated by the parliament or would have to be discussed in parliament and signed into law by the president. That's why I'm saying the political will at the moment seems to be heading towards that direction, in part because Kabila has actually frowned, and publicly so, at how the current political administration is prosecuting the war against M23. To the extent that he has been very vocal against the administration, it is perceived that Kabila is supporting M23, which is actually a historical mistake, given that those who are doing the analysis now don't realize that M23 was as much a headache for Kabila as it is for Tshisekedi.
Reasons given for the call to revoke this immunity are that authorities have gathered clear evidence that implicates Kabila in war crimes, in crimes against humanity, and a massacre of civilians. Do we know if this evidence comes as part of his successor, President Felix Tshisekedi's 2024 accusations that Kabila was supporting the M23 rebels, or are they from fresh accusations and leads?
To the extent that we have not seen the evidence in question, I think we shouldn't comment on that.
Kabila did deny the accusations, though, leveled against him and returned to the DRC last month to help with peace efforts and in rebuilding the DRC. What do you make of the timing of this move by him? I think our lines got cut again. We're in conversation with Dr. Charles Nyoikonge, who is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst, talking about the DRC. There seems to be quite a lot of things that he's not able to comment on, so I'm not sure how much we're able to get out of him, but we're going to dig as far as we can, and we're going to try and get a hold of him again here on Africa Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, our time is now 19 minutes past 8 Central African. And still to come, we've got our headlines.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation that one finds in African politics when a former leader of a rival party comes out of power. What we've seen, sadly, over time is that the justice, in inverted commas, that follows often has more of a political weight than sometimes the issues at hand. And as Mr. Nyokonge was saying, part of the deal in terms of stabilizing the country was to give former President Kabila immunity so that he could do his bit to help move the country along and see the elections that eventually saw the current president take up his position.
All right. Doctor, I understand you're back. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm right here, Asanda.
Our phone got cut there. Apologies for that. Let's continue then on that point that you we were on in terms of him denying the accusations and then returning to the DRC to help with peace efforts and in rebuilding the DRC. What do you make of the timing of that move by him?
The timing is opportune, particularly because Tshisekedi is running out of time in his second mandate. So somewhere, somehow, Tshisekedi has to frame a new political action or a new political set of things which he has to do. So Kabila himself, also wanting to position himself as part of those who can actually stabilize the DRC, is perhaps positioning himself, otherwise a successor, who can actually take over from Tshisekedi and turn the page from what Kabila has considered a mistake in leadership or mispriorities, which have actually not assessed the troubles of the Congo properly.
So is President Felix Tshisekedi also trying in a way to shield himself from having a reputation that's in tatters? Should Kabila actually get involved in peace efforts and succeed?
President Tshisekedi is in his second and last term. Time is running out very fast. he has not done much in terms of stabilization of the Congo, or in terms of addressing some of the structural challenges, whether it's the road infrastructure of the Congolese people, to the extent that a couple of months back he went down Kinshasa to a road which he frequented himself as a civilian, and acted as if to say this road has just gotten bad now. The people who live in the Congo know that the state of the roads in Kinshasa is deplorable. So it can be inferred that Tshisekedi is trying to build on a new political action or a new political memorandum to run or to extend his term or to run for a third term. To the extent that it is so, Kabila is equally trying to muscle support for or to position himself or his successor as persons who can actually stabilize the Congo, given that Tshisekedi has not advanced in that inroad.
How much of an impact will the fact that he did flee to a neighboring country, Kabila, how much of an impact will that have in terms of this case?
I believe that the perception that he flew to a neighboring country is also political. Kabila came to South Africa for studies, and he is registered at the University of Johannesburg, where he's doing his PhD. He has largely taken residence here. Secondly, it was important, as it has always been, for any previous administration to actually step out of the political fray. Kabila left the country to allow Tshisekedi to lead. Now Tshisekedi is struggling with addressing or with providing some of his own political reforms. So Kabila returning to the country should not be perceived as him fleeing. He is a Congolese, he is right to live in the Congo, and he can return to the Congo anytime. Whether he would return now that the justice system is being weaponized against him is another thing altogether.
How will this action by the DRC government impact the political stability of the DRC now?
It is likely going to impact it negatively, because those who support Kabila, who are largely from the east, would perceive that the people from the center are now really fighting them. And that is going to strengthen the hand of M23, that might even offer Kabila a home, thereby entrenching the narrative that Kabila is indeed a product of and supporting the M23.
If he decides to flee again, whether it's back to South Africa or another country, what will the implications be of that, and can he do that?
Kabila can flee, can go anywhere, and he can seek asylum anywhere if his life is politically threatened, as is the case right now. It would largely depend on the host state, whether they receive him. And I think South Africa has done him that favor, and has done the Congolese people a great favor for so many years. Even the hosting of Kabila, or the resources which South Africa has spent, whether it's with the peace accords of the 90s, and very recently with the summit DRC, I think South Africa has invested sufficiently, which is largely being under-recognized by the DRC as they continue to bicker and not look into the face to realize that the problems of the Congo are indeed internal.
Okay, as you say, Senate would need to approve this move. A new law might need to be signed into effect for it to hold, for the lifelong immunity to be revoked. How long would that process take?
That process can take anything from a week to a month. As long as this is what the political elite wants, they can accelerate it.
All right. Well, let's leave it there for now, Dr. Nyikonge, and we thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you very much, Asanda, and have a good day.
You too. Dr. Charles Nyikonge is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst. Was trying to figure also, Peter, in terms of previous situations that were similar to this. Belarus's president did this as well to have his immunity in place. And he signed a new law for that to happen, but he was still in power at that time. So it worked in his favor. I wonder how much of a possibility will this be in Kabila's situation?
Like I said, I mean, you have new regimes or new administrations that come in. And in the lead up to that, and this is one of the things that President Thabo Mbeki often used to say when people were going after Omar al-Bashir, he said that trying to go for him in the way that people wanted may not help bring about peace. And that so often you have to weigh how important is prosecuting someone versus peace in the country. And so you offer these immunity deals so that the person who is fearful of prosecution cooperates. And remember, they have the power at the time.
Yeah.
And so you give them something so that they can give you something back in return. And there should really be an honesty by the new administration to say, okay, we are now where we are as a result of deals that were made in the past, and we should honor them. And one gets a sense often that the first thing they want to do is revenge and say, listen, this is what you did to me when I was in the opposition. Hakainde Hichilema also said the same thing, because he suffered a lot before he became president of Zambia in the previous administration. And one of the things that he said straight away was that he wasn't going on a witch hunt and he wasn't going to go after those people that incarcerated him. And so one suspects, sadly, that the situation in DRC now is more about politics, and Kabila's criticism now that's followed, had he kept quiet, he probably wouldn't have been bothered, you know. But it is what it is, and we just hope that sanity prevails for the sake of peace, because in the end, it's the citizens who bear the consequences of leaders' actions.
And then again, was the proof that Kabila did indeed go back to the country to have some relations that were severed, reconnected in a way, because that's another question that we still have as the media. Was he really there? Was he there? What's the evidence that he actually did return from SA?
Half the things we'll never really get to the bottom of, and what is really behind some of the things. I mean, all we can go on are where did the passport travel? Because, you know, depending on who you talk to, there are 1,000,001 theories about why, where, what, where, when, and for what. And the DRC is really complex. He's just but one small piece in a much larger puzzle that involves so many countries, so many different leaders.
All right, well, we leave that one there for now. I'm sure we'll talk about it again next week and get an update in terms of where we are in the world of DRC. It's become its own world. Let's get our news headlines now. It's just almost 30 minutes past 8 Central African time here on Africa Rise and Shine. Good morning again, Nolutando Buteles.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
South Africa's Defence Minister Angie Motshekga has established a military board of inquiry into the deaths of 14 soldiers during a peacekeeping mission in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo earlier this year. Police in South Africa, meanwhile, have opened a case of culpable homicide to establish how 3 Free State Province officers died. The constables were travelling from Bloemfontein to Limpopo Province on deployment. And votes are being counted in a series of local elections in Britain, which are being seen as the first meaningful test for the governing Labour Party. I'll have this and more at the top.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time for the final sports update right here on Rise and Shine, and I'm happy with my beloved brother Figile Lingwati after a Manchester United win last night in the Europa League. Figile, are we going to win this thing, my brother?
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
No, Peter, I can't say anything. I'll just tell you, we win game at the time. Let's start off with Bafana Bafana, who are bracing themselves for their tough African Nations Championship CHAN qualifier against Malawi on the Saturday at the Republic Stadium in Lilongwe. The South African interim coach Muli Fintseki says the main objective is to find the back of the net away from home. After initially struggling to secure players, The coach is happy to have the team that he believes can compete over 2 legs. The coach says they have spent a considerable amount of time analyzing their opponents and they're anticipating a tough clash in Lilongwe. The team will return home on the 5th of May ahead of hosting the return match at Loftus Versfeld Stadium in Tshwane on the 11th of May. More football news. Amajida are up and running at the 2026 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON tournament as they beat Tanzanian side 1-0 in the second qualifier played at the Suez Canal Authority Stadium in Ismailia. Amajida needed a goal from man of the match Shaquille April to seal this victory, and they ground out the result against a very tough and physical East African opponent. Amajida head coach Raymond Mdaga says they had to dig deep in this game to get the result.
We knew that for us to get the result, we need to grind. It needs character. Sometimes it's beyond tactics. It's about the character of the boy, the fighting spirit. They are a good team, honestly. They believe in their strength, they play to their strength, and they've got 2 strong players physically, so they played crosses. They made it difficult for us because we are good on the ground and they wanted us to chase those long balls, so it was quite difficult. But other than that, we appreciate the character of the boys to stay with that 1-0 that we scored early until the end of the game.
Amajida losing the opening game against the host Egypt 1-0, having missed several goal-scoring opportunities. Mdaga made 4 changes to his starting lineup for this game and says it was informed by how he was approaching this game.
Exactly, it was about more of the physicality of the opponents. You see, Egyptians are not that physical. They play good football, good tactically, so you can put your players who are good in terms of playing the ball. It's match to match, but when you have got players who are a bit physical, you need character. You see the number 7 that got the man of the match. It's somebody who plays with character, somebody who can fight. You need players who can stand in terms of any challenges that come across physically or anywhere in the field of play. So we had to make those changes and put the other players on the line.
On to volleyball. Kenya Volleyball Federation KVF President Charles Nyamberi has filed a case at the Sports Dispute Tribunal SDT seeking declaration as the body's voting delegate at the upcoming National Olympic Committee NOC elections. In a suit filed against KVF Deputy Treasurer Moses Mbutia, Mutie Gaguru of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission and NOC, Nyamberi argues that he is legally empowered to carry the vote on behalf of KVF as per its constitution. On Monday, the High Court vacated previous orders that had compelled IEBC to include the 4 federations in the polls under whatever circumstances. The ruling gave the elections a go-ahead, even at the possibility of the electoral body excluding the 4 federations should they fail to agree on who has the voting rights among their officials. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's get our update in terms of the world of business. Tabiso Lehuku has the details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
A very good morning. South Africa's electricity minister, Dr. Hussein Ramokgopa, says Africa is ready to enter into partnerships as the world transitions to green energy sources. Ramokgopa delivered a keynote address at the opening of the second G20 Energy Transition Working Group meeting in Cape Town yesterday. The aim of the 3-day meeting is to bring together industry role players from across the world. They're discussing advancing sustainable energy transitions, fostering essential cooperation, and sharing knowledge. Ramokgopa comments.
Africa has the youngest population, the greatest solar potential, and the fastest growing demand for energy services. We are not the last frontier for development. We are the next frontier of opportunity. We welcome partnerships that view African countries not merely as recipients of energy investments, but as co-creators of the solutions needed for a global just transition.
Some workers in South Africa have welcomed the Progressive Domestic Workers Union's call for the establishment of a pension fund. The union wants National Treasury to set up the fund for domestic workers so that they can retire with financial security. According to Statistics South Africa, about 850,000 women employed as domestic workers in the country. The union says it has drafted a proposal which it will hand to the Employment and Labour Department this month. Some domestic workers say a pension fund would help them greatly.
It will help us so that if we reach 60 years, we sit at home, then we have something in our pockets for our children to eat and everything.
I am very happy. This means when I leave my job, I will have money to look after my children.
The boss of Apple, Tim Cook, says he expects U.S. tariffs will cost his company almost $1 billion in the current quarter. That's despite President Donald Trump's decision to spare key electronics from the new import taxes. The BBC's Lily Jamali has the details.
Donald Trump wanted iPhones to be made in the U.S. Instead, what's going to happen is the vast majority of iPhones that are sold here in the U.S. will now be made in India. And the country of origin for a lot of other big products, so think Mac computers, think AirPods, iPads. The country of origin for those products sold here will now be Vietnam. Cook also said that outside of the U.S., products sold elsewhere, most of that stuff is still going to be made in China. So the desired impact that Donald Trump and his administration were hoping to have, it doesn't look like that's going to happen here.
The US dollar headed for a third straight weekly gain as signs of progress in Washington's talks with some of its trading partners and better than expected data ease concerns over investments in the world's largest economy. The Aussie dollar climbed as Asian shares carried on a rally on Wall Street amid renewed optimism for riskier assets. The yen touched a 3-week low. The dollar in Nigeria will cost you 1,000 naira 605. Botswana 13 pula 56. Kenya 128 shilling 904, and Zambia 27 kwacha 88. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 real 67. Russia 81 ruble 64. India 84 rupees 62. China 7 yuan 27. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 60. 75 pence a British pound, 88 euro. Gold is trading at $3,252 and platinum at $965 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $62.55 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Huku.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Hey there, this is Palisa Tau, part of the dynamic duo that gives you on the move right here on Channel Africa from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Africa time. Well, it's with your help for the past 2 years that we have been a multi-award winning show.
Well, yeah, we're keeping it on the move in 2025. And yes, I'm the other half of the duo, Benjamin Mushatama, and we're going to keep you going with the great conversations. Turn it up.
Okay. On the Move comes back in 2025 to give you more of the content that made us a Maldo and to deliver that bold, boundary-pushing content that you love. And of course, giving you a ride through the 3 hours of news, views, and entertainment.
Every weekday from 9 to midday Central African time, right here on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Cool.
Let's go.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. músicos. Lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
The Kingdom of Lesotho says it has made advances in protecting the rights of women and children against domestic violence and protecting their rights. The country made representation to the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva on Wednesday. It says it is making meaningful progress to advance human rights. Timakadzo Lishoro has the details.
The constitutional monarchy of Lesotho has been faced with a myriad of challenges, including high levels of domestic violence, increasingly violent police, food insecurity, as well as a high prevalence of HIV. The removal of PEPFAR will pose a challenge for the country to continue fighting against the disease. Leading the delegation, Justice Minister Richard Ramueletsi told the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva that the coalition government is working to improve its human rights track record amid huge problems.
Food insecurity and high prevalence rate of HIV/AIDS, among others, and this inhibits advancement of human rights. With support from WFP, the government is able to promote diversified livelihoods and income generation, especially among young people and stakeholder farmers. These efforts aim to improve food security, enhance local livelihoods, and ensure a resilient agricultural sector. Lesotho is beset with challenges such as poverty, high level of unemployment.
The country is currently undergoing its fourth Universal Periodic Review, UPR, for human rights protections along with 13 other countries. The UPR is a unique mechanism for the UNHRC member state to undergo a peer review of its human rights records every 4.5 years. Ramueletsi stated that while Lesotho observes both domestic and international laws, some human rights instruments are yet to be domesticated. The Mountain Kingdom has made strides on environmental issues through establishing legal frameworks to promote the protection of the environment, and changes to customary marriage and inheritance laws, as well as laws that deal with persons living with disabilities, are underway.
These reforms target 7 thematic areas: the Constitution, judiciary, security, parliament, economic, public service, and the media. The 10th, 11th, and 12th Amendment to the Constitution bills have been developed, with the 10th Amendment being in its advanced stage in the parliamentary process.
The Justice Minister defended the country's controversial cybersecurity law, seen as repressive to freedom of speech.
The Computer Crime Cybersecurity Bill does not in any way infringe on the freedom of expression. On the contrary, it balances the need for cybersecurity and protection of fundamental rights. The bill ensures citizens' privacy through provisions such as limitation on criminal liability for service providers and international cooperation to combat cybersecurity.
Representatives from UN member states applauded Lesotho for making progress in bringing its laws in line with the treaties of the UNHRC, but also made the following recommendations.
In the spirit of constructive dialogue, Zambia wishes to recommend the following to the delegation of Lesotho. 1. Enact legislation that explicitly prohibits all forms of corporal punishment of children and adults in all settings. 2. Consider amending legislation to set the minimum age for marriage at 18 years.
We remain concerned about the persistently high levels of violence against women and girls, including the prevalence of domestic violence. In the view of the above, Slovenia would like to recommend to Lesotho to strengthen integrated child-sensitive and gender-responsive protection services and to allocate resources to implement the 5-year National Prevention and Response Plan on Violence Against Children.
South Africa wishes to respectfully recommend that Lesotho consider the following recommendations. Expedite the process of establishing the operationalization of the National Human Rights Institution in compliance with the Paris Principles redouble efforts to ensure the equal representation and participation of women in public and political life, and bolster measures to improve conditions of detention.
Switzerland welcomes the delegation from Lesotho and recommends that measures are taken to effectively implement the 2024 law on the administration of goods, property and inheritance, ensuring the equality in inheritance regardless of the gender of the heirs.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Okay, it's time now for one of my favorite features of the week, actually, and this is where we look into the world of arts and culture, and nobody does it better than Nhlanhla Mahlangu. Here's this week's edition of RT Beats.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats, exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, South Africa's comedians celebrated, and the African All-Star Series, A Glimpse into the World of Content Creators, launches. South Africa's comedy industry was celebrated at the 12th Annual Savannah Comics Choice Comedy Awards held at the Lyrics Theatre in Johannesburg. The night was a spectacular showcase of humor, stand-up comedy, and endless laughs. The event brought together comedians, celebrities, and industry professionals to honor the best in stand-up comedy, comedic writing, and content creation. A total of 12 categories were celebrated, with each winner receiving the coveted Waldo Trophy. Celestine Dooley received the Comedian of the Year award.
Oh my God, it's amazing. Like, honestly, this is the bigger one. I love what I won, and I love the fact that I won. Like, there's nothing to it. Like, I'm really excited. I didn't think I was going to win, but yes, I did. Thank you.
20 years in the industry. Yeah. How has it been?
It's been great. It's been a roller coaster still, but it's been also where I truly found myself. Like, this is what I was meant to do, and I love it.
Headliner of the Year and Best Solo Show award went to Robbie Williams.
I'm super grateful, and I'm very happy for everyone who won, and I'm happy for everybody who was nominated. I think I wasn't prepared for any acceptance speech because I didn't think I'd win anyone, because you're surrounded by such great comedians, and the fact that my name got called out twice, all praise to the Most High.
Just how have you grown as a comedian since your first award?
I became more fearless because I realized that if I do me, people appreciate it. And that's the fear of being an artist, because you don't know what's the right move, but you just go out there and do it. And when people accept and appreciate what you do, that's such a blessing. I'm very grateful that I can do what I love and be surrounded by people I love.
Celine Chika received the Innovative Comedy Performance Award.
I feel great, actually. It's been such a wonderful night of comedy, and it's really lovely to be celebrated.
What inspired your style of comedy?
Oh, that's a good question. I really started enjoying musical comedy, but for stand-up, I think just, the typical self-deprecating humor here and there. But I think, musical comedy, there was like shows like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and groups like Lonely Island and stuff. And it just expanded my mind of what's possible for comedy.
How do you prepare for your comedy show?
There's a lot of writing and rewriting and talking to other comedians and like workshopping material with them as well. So yeah, it's a very collaborative thing. You've got to test it out with other people first. And then, it's just about memorizing and practicing on stage, getting as much stage time as possible to just like refine it. So yeah.
And with you now winning this award, what sort of doors do you see opening up for you?
I think this kind of style will definitely just have more credits, I think, on the scene, that if I'm now this kind of musical comedian, that people will have more space for it and just allow it more in traditional comedy spaces and hopefully inspire other people to fill that space as well.
TikTok has partnered with South African entertainment commentator Phil Mpila to launch a vodcast showcasing Africa's top content creators' in-depth interviews about their content creation journeys. The 8-episode vodcast looks into the lives and experiences of 11 South African creatives, including Bakadi Queen DJ Doo-Wop, entertainment creator Nombulelo Fox, and feel-good creator Begi Ndamase, amongst others. Head of Content Operations in Sub-Saharan Africa, Bonisa Sidwaba, says the initiative is a testament to their continued commitment to fostering a vibrant, inclusive, creative community.
How this came about was we realized that there are a lot of creators that are creating great content on the platform, and we wanted to find a way to celebrate our creators. We created the African All-Stars as a newsroom post, and we basically profile creators against various moments. So for example, when there's Pride, we'll profile creators. Africa Month, last year we profiled creators as well. So that's really where it came from. We wanted a platform to celebrate creators, our own owned platform. And how we selected creators, we looked at creators that have an impact on the platform. So which are the creators that are attracting and holding community? Which are the creators that are really invoking or inspiring creativity and spreading joy, because that is our mission. So this is the first video series. It's the very, very first one. But the video series is a part of the overall series. So African All-Stars actually started as a written newsroom post. For that one, we profile creators from everywhere, from all over sub-Saharan Africa. So this one is now basically the visual video representation of the series, which we've launched in South Africa. And yes, the plan is definitely to expand to other markets in Africa.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday, for Channel Africa, I am Dlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
All right, so today in history, we were talking strangely about the DRC and what's his name?
Joseph Kabila.
Joseph Kabila. Well, in 1997, on this day, the 2nd of May, his father, Laurent Désiré Kabila's rebel forces captured Kisangani. So this was the beginning of the end of the old regime, Joseph Kabila's father. And this was during the First Congo War. Rebel forces led by Laurent Désiré Kabila captured the key city of Kisangani from Mobutu Sese Seko's government. Can you believe Mobutu Sese Seko? That's taking us back a long time
So this
now.
was today?
This was today
2nd of
in
April.
1997. And this marked a major turning point in the conflict, accelerating the fall of Mobutu Sese Seko's regime, which collapsed literally a month later. And it's interesting how over time the same kind of themes play out. We're now seeing the M23 rebels are doing much the same in the east of the country, taking major city one after the other. And there are fears and questions that would they dare to march on Kinshasa? I doubt it, because really at the end of the day, our understanding from what we hear is that it's about the mineral wealth in the east of the country, and that the, what do they call them? The sponsors outside the country are more interested in that than the collapse of the DRC's government. Fascinating. But guess who we are going to talk to right now?
We've just had Benjamin Mushatama walking in the studio, about to tell us what's coming up on The Move. That comes after Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa, of course. By the way, it is our 59th birthday
It is.
this
Happy
month.
birthday.
I thought we'd walk in with like balloons in the studio.
And cake.
We need to do better. We need to do absolutely better. And the cake was supposed to be here yesterday.
Amen.
Do you know what happened,
the ones
Benjamin?
that start off the day with us. So I was hoping that
the
you guys would
bakeries are
start
not
off
open at
first.
6 in the morning.
Exactly.
By 9 o'clock, you should be the one walking in with the cake.
Excuses. It seems like everyone in this floor has an excuse why that
something's in there.
cake is very vacant.
Yeah.
It's loading. It's coming next week, maybe.
What's happening on The Move? And I know that on Fridays it's a really easy day.
It's an easy day.
Yeah.
But I'm solo today.
Oh my
it's going to be a
goodness.
tough day. No, it's going to be great. Today we're looking at a very interesting conversation around, there's new genres like Afro pop,
Yeah.
But like, what happened to the old school stuff like jazz?
Mate, R&B.
90s R&B.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, remember 90s R&B?
Yeah.
I think the best era for R&B for me was the 70s.
70s. So I've got
and then
several
the
loves.
2000s after that.
For me, I think the golden era of music was the Motown era.
Yeah.
I think 60s,
Fair enough.
70s, that really was, there was something about it.
Fair enough.
People could sing also
yeah,
that time. They
and
were
it
not
was
using
music.
These funny, what do they call them?
Auto-tunes.
Auto-tunes. You had to be able to sing.
Yeah, we're sounding very old, the three of us.
I know we are. Hey. And there's young people listening saying, "Oh, shit."
New genre now that's come up.
No. We're actually going to be looking at the jazz genre.
Okay.
And looking at it from, okay, does it even have a standing right now? Does it even have legs to stand on?
Yeah.
In any way?
But you're right. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
You don't hear it as much, particularly
Sure.
on radio, unless it's on specialist niche programs.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it's not being cycled.
And I mean, you go to a festival or a kind of a concert, and then you're like, what's happening? Because when you go to a festival, you see a whole lot of young people there.
Yeah.
And then when you listen to mainstream media, there's like, that genre is non-existent.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So is there a gap somewhere where we're not aligning with what's happening on the ground? Or is it just a niche market that comes together in these gatherings, and that's when it's the only time they can hang out,
I'm going to give away my age now, but some of us used to go downtown to kippies.
Oh, yeah. No, your age has been very revealed. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Kippies is still there.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't have the same elements, but it's still there. Yeah.
Wow. Now I've got to go down there. That was the thing, man.
Interesting chat, eh?
Yeah, and in some of the shabins, this was the music that was sort of flowing in between the chords and so.
40 years ago.
Exactly.
We'll leave it at that for now.
Let's not reveal his age.
Let's leave it at that for now. It's okay. All right. So I'm sure you'll enjoy that chat. I'm gonna tune in as well. I'll enjoy it. It's an interesting.
So, who is your best jazz artist of all time, anywhere in the world?
Oh, I just have to say John Coltrane. I'm like a big John Coltrane fan.
That's interesting.
More than Miles Davis, actually.
Do you know, it's interesting because within the jazz world also there's different eras. So there's the old school,
classic,
and then for me, it's the Earl Clues that I really enjoyed, which is a bit more modern.
Yes.
You still can feel the jazz vibe, but it's more contemporary.
Yes, that was also great.
Yeah.
When did acid jazz come about?
Hey,
maybe
that's another whole story.
Maybe it was after which, got a bit of an
guys, I think you should stay with me on the show. Let's just hang out. Melissa's not around. Come on.
Well, that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Rise and Shine. This week's editions. We'll see you next week. I'm Peter Ndoro. Goodbye.
I'm Asanda. It's goodbye from us, and hello to Benjamin Mushatama. As you heard, he's riding solo today. So please be kind and get in touch on @ChannelAfrica1 to share your views about On The Move coming up next. After the news right now at 9 o'clock Central African Time with Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Amanda, and good morning. South Africa's Defence Minister Angie Motshekga has established a military board of inquiry into the deaths of 14 soldiers during a peacekeeping mission in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo earlier this year. The soldiers were killed in the battle between the DRC army and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. In a written parliamentary reply, Motshekga says that it is, as is standard practice, the board of inquiry has already been established and is in custody of SADC. She added that it only covers specific incidents, not the entire period. Police in South Africa have opened a case of culpable homicide to establish how